Sure.
Hi everyone, welcome to the September 15th regular council meeting for the Village of Cumberland. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are gathering and governing on what is now known as the Comox territory. And this morning I had the opportunity to participate in a restorative justice session, and the opening of that session spoke to Indigenous ways of knowing and learning and behaving in the world, and that's where restorative justice came from. And I just want to give that acknowledgement to our opportunity to consistently learn from our Indigenous neighbors. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda with late item 7.1?
So moved.
Thank you. And all in favor? That's carried. And minutes for committee of the whole September 2nd and regular council meeting September 2nd.
Move minutes.
Second.
And everyone in favor? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And delegations. Cumberland Rotary, come on up.
I'll speak loud so you can hear me, so I don't have to use the microphone. I'm Leslie Baird. I'm the chair of the Cumberland Rotary. This is year 2. And I'd like to thank you very much for having us here tonight to talk about the MOU and our vision for the Rotary Orchard Park. And in doing that, it's going to be Dave Stevens, who was president at the time when they took over the park and has been working on it continuously since then. I think it was 2007. So he has a great deal of information in his head. So here he goes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Dave.
I thank council for taking the time and the effort for meeting with us, our Rotary group. We started this this project through the approval of Bruce Keeler, who apparently had that piece of property from an area that we used to affectionately call Vinyl Village. He provided some parkland, and it never did turn into a park. And we noticed these apple trees appearing, and so we started with his saying to us, "Okay, you can go in there." And that's the way it was back then. We just went in there. And so over 18 years, we've been picking away. Unfortunately, we didn't take any pictures, and it's sad that we didn't take any pictures, but believe me, there was the broom and the blackberry vines and stinging needles and all that kind of stuff down there. And over the years, we've taken it all away. And I do understand and I do appreciate that there's now different levels of government that have to approve what we do. We just can't go down and willy-nilly and do what we want and expect it to be okay, like the old days. You know, I think it looks good, so we're going to do it. But that orchard down there has seen the heritage orchard, that I like to call it, has seen a major transformation from what it was to what it is. And what goes on down there, I've seen weddings, I've seen anniversaries, I've seen school children down there at their year end, having a wonderful time down in there in the park and enjoying what our Rotary Club has done. And we want to see a piece of art put down in that park. And it's a granite sofa and chair. It's a lovely item. And I think it might be the only granite sofa and chair in the province. I can understand that it could be a beautiful place for a photo shoot, for memories. It will be nice. And it's not like Rotary, it's not like Rotary, we're just gonna plunk it in there. I can assure you, if we get the opportunity to put it in there, it will be done properly. You know, we have a retired owner of the Cumberland Concrete that would supervise the foundation to be put on, and drawings and whatnot, if required. And I think, and I'd like to think that the Village of Cumberland and our visitors appreciate and accept the beauty of that orchard and what we have accomplished to date. And we think the addition of this granite piece of art will enhance what we've already created. We have used, to maintain that park down there, with support of parks, have been tremendous help with us. And I certainly appreciate what Kevin and crew have done and continually advocating for us. But we have used our own equipment. It's been hand-me-down equipment, and we've always kept it up to repairs, and we've done this all on our own until recently. Kevin says if there's anything any way we can help repair your lawnmowers, bring it down, and the shops guys will do it. And we've taken advantage of that. And in closing, we've had a major fundraiser down at the Rotary Rig Fest. And our Rotary group has allocated a very nice sum of money for us to spend down there. And we have phase one. We've had the Grow Tree Arborists down there in the late spring, and they're coming back in the fall. And it's going to take a few years to get those trees looking good, because they've been let go, but they have a vision, we have a vision, that sooner or later those trees are going to look magnificent. They're going to be bearing beautiful fruit, to be shared and used by however the Village of Cumberland sees. You go down and pick your own apples, make your own pie from a basket of apples that you pick down there. And you know, I might not see that in my lifetime, but I know my grandchildren will see that. If we can, it'll be a legacy. I know it will be a legacy. So, in conclusion, I would ask council to approve the installation of this piece of art. It won't cost the Village of Cumberland any money. We will foot the bill. We will do everything to get it in there, and it'll be a beautiful. We pick the beautiful spot where you can see the swamp. I like to call it. That's the only place where you can see water view from the orchard. So whoever sits in it, you'll have water view, and we hope to even get it started this soon as you say, sure Dave, go ahead and do that. We would probably start. And I can entertain any questions about the park and how it got started, or what other involvement that I happen to have down there, or nothing? In the memorandum of understanding, we have also asked if we could get water down to the park. And I'm not thinking a water fountain or an open tap, But similarly to the water that we have down at the square, the village square, where you have to open up a door with a lock and a tap. So maybe we could clean the benches, you know, instead of, presently we're taking down, I'm taking down buckets of water to clear the bird stuff off, you know? And, you know, that would open up to us maybe some particularly shrubbery. We're thinking of a pollination garden. I think that would be brilliant down there. And it's gonna need a bit of watering. So those are sort of plans that we have down there, and hopefully we can get that water tap with a lock pad on it, and only accessible by people with the key. Got anything else? I got that.
Thank you so much, Dave. Questions, council?
More of a comment. Did come, I think it was about 17 years ago, and I remember what that area looked like, and it's just been such a beautiful progression. Part of your team works there. The bench looks beautiful. I thought Leslie was asking us to help move it, so I got better. And it doesn't look like it's going to be easily vandalized. That's not an open invitation for anyone to try, but it looks like it's robust enough that it's going to not require a lot of resources to maintain that solid piece of ground over time. So I look forward to sitting on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you very much for that and everything that Rotary does. Just a question to staff, if that's a super difficult thing to put in a receptacle or tap down there. Too much difficulty.
There's water on Camp Road, so we just have to figure out where to tie it in and how to bring it down. There's some technical considerations. But yeah, it's not possible in water source.
Well, echoing the thanks and the same observation of how, having lived there in Cameron for a few years, how much that area has improved and how much you've done. It's again sort of a question of staff, but I presume we'll see a staff report with this agreement for our consideration soon.
You had to add soon, didn't you? I'm not sure about that. But, and yeah, the MOU and a staff report will be coming back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
She didn't say that.
No, just a quick thanks to say thanks for this list of things that Rotary have done over the years. Much appreciated.
Yes, and I will echo that. Thank you for everything that Rotary does in our community all the time. And thank you specifically for Orchard Park. As you know, that is my neighborhood park. And it's also a bit of a bare highway. So I love the idea of pollinator plants, but I also don't want to see you put in a whole bunch of effort to build a garden and then the bears go and roll around in it. I really like the idea of the concrete furniture because it's bear-proof and dog-proof and all the other proofs that we need down there. It's a pretty remote area with some definite wildlife things. And I really, really appreciate, I think the heritage apple trees are a huge asset to our community. In the world of apple trees, it is a smaller and smaller amount of types of apples in the world. And I hope that someone is saving seeds and trying to figure out what those apples are, because I would love to see that story told of where they potentially, if we could find out where they came from, what kind of apples they are, because I just think that's really interesting. Yeah, I just appreciate the maintenance that's going on there. I have seen you in action down there. And I hope you have younger people in your Rotary team to continue to do that work, because it's not easy to pull blackberries. And so yes, thank you for all you've done and are doing.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
So is there a motion or something there? Just to receive the delegation.
I recommend council receive the delegation from Cumberland Rotary regarding the Orchard Park stewardship agreement.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. You're welcome to stay. Our meetings are quite informative and interesting, as you know. Thank you for the invitation. We won't take offense. Okay, next up is correspondence from S. Christian around upholding the tanker ban. Do you want me to just speak to it?
Yes.
So we got this correspondence in our reader lab, I'm gonna say last week, in some previous time. And there is a conversation happening nationwide right now around large projects and the reemergence of potential tanker traffic on the coast. I think the province of British Columbia has made a decision to ban tanker traffic on the coast for good reason. And we're all old enough, we remember Exxon Valdez and the impact that had. And I don't think any of us want to see that. And so I think it's kind of a critical time for anyone and everyone in BC to speak up around the potential increase of tankers in our oceans. And so that's why I brought this forward. And there's a motion that they're suggesting, and I think what I would suggest is that we refer this back, and I will bring some kind of letter or something forward if council is in agreement to address this to the right people to have the impact we can have in the positions we hold. Questions?
We worked on the Exxon spill at one point. We're very lucky to not have that risk. I think the pressure on coastal communities is getting more and more to actually relax this ban. And although I believe it's under federal jurisdiction, BC's resilience in resisting this has been a huge part of why we don't see tanker traffic. The economic benefits of having a vibrant coastal community, fishing community, far outweighs the risk of this. There are other routes, and I don't think we need to, especially in these very difficult to navigate waters, I don't think we need to put ourselves in this. So I strongly support this motion too.
Anybody else?
I'm just curious, do you know if anybody has taken this up and is bringing it to UBC up next week?
I don't know that.
Okay.
That's also a good idea.
Yeah. I would be surprised if somebody doesn't, and we don't see this as a motion coming forward from UBC on this one.
Great. Something's going on. So there's a recommendation there, if you want to, I don't know, we're going to receive it, and what would you like us to, can I just ask for a referral to write a letter? Does that work?
Are you asking for council to ask the mayor to write a letter to, who was it? To the province?
For the province. I think it's a suggestion, but I would say we would write to the province and the prime minister.
I would say that the motion should be that the village write a letter and the mayor could take that up.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I'll move that council receive the correspondence from S. Christian regarding a motion to uphold the tanker ban, and the mayor write a letter to powers that be, prime minister, stating so on behalf of the council.
Okay, seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And next is unfinished business. So that's a heritage alteration permit and development variance permit for 2691 Dunsmuir Avenue
also known as the Ilo Ilo or Ilo Ilo.
Hi, Seamus.
Good evening. All right, so good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to request council decision on heritage alteration permit HAP 2501 and development variance permit DVP 2510 at 2691 Dunsmuir Avenue, also known as the Ilo Ilo or Ilo Ilo. So for the background, of course, the applicant is seeking approval to do some site alterations, specifically to facilitate a parking area, new garden center, and associated racking, some new doors and fencing in association with a forthcoming hardware store in the building. The applicant is seeking a few variances in relation to this project, including allowing for gravel with binders instead of asphalt, concrete, or other required hard surfacing for vehicle parking stalls, maneuvering aisles, and off-street loading spaces, reducing the number of required off-street loading spaces for a commercial building with a gross floor area between 465 meters squared and 2,325 meters squared from 2 to 1, reducing the number of required Class 1 bicycle parking spaces for retail minor use from 12 to 6, increasing the maximum permitted fence height for fences along a front lot line in the VCUMU1 zone from 1.2 to 1.5 meters for the portion shown in green attached in the Schedule B in the draft development variance permit, and increasing the maximum permitted fence height for fences along a front lot line in the VCUMU1 zone from 1.2 meters to 1.6 meters for the portion shown in red within Schedule B in the attached development variance permit. So this is a pretty complex report. There's a few different things going on here. So how I'm gonna tackle this is I'll talk about everything but the fences in the first section of the verbal report, and then the fences in its own section. So yeah, certainly if there's any questions that come along the way, certainly ask those because I want to make sure everyone has the clearest information before making a decision tonight. So I'll start with everything else portion of the verbal report. So again, I'll talk to everything but the fencing. So overall, the design of the parking lot is supportable. There is some minor landscaping proposed to help soften the parking area. The doors are facing the interior of the lot, so in towards the parking area. There's going to be one door for the truck loading as well as the pedestrian entrance from the parking lot. These are going to be on the facade that faces towards the parking lot, so there's no impacts to the frontage or the heritage facade of the Ilo Ilo. There is going to be some exterior lighting installed, which is going to be downcast and dark skies friendly as per our conditions and requirements. The garden center proposed, of course, is an industrial style garden center, something you'd see at like a Home Depot or a superstore. However, the location on the site being at a lower grade than the Dunsmuir Avenue frontage, proposed new fencing and condition to incorporate Ilo elements such as beams and the like to build things like racking will help soften the visual impact of such implements, as well as tie the whole structure to the story of the Ilo Ilo itself. So overall, from the form and character side of the permit, there are no major staff concerns in that regard. So when it comes to the three other variances that are not the fencing, the surfacing variance is supported by staff. Since there are no plans for the village to pave the laneway in the near future, and as gravel with binders is a supportable parking area surfacing in the official community plan and the heritage conservation criteria, we don't have any concerns with this request. Now, that being said, we are expecting an increase in some increase in traffic along the laneway, but we aren't expecting it to be the point where dust being kicked up from the traffic will be a major issue. And it'll be very similar to some of our other laneways in the community where we do have businesses set up and utilizing the laneway. So it'll be very, very similar to those and very, very similar to that. So again, the reduction to the loading space from 2 to 1 based on the building's GFA. So the expectation for this hardware store is it's not gonna be like a Slag or a Home Depot. It'll be a more small scale hardware store. So while there will be some lumber and garden supplies sold, the way we've been told to describe it is sort of like somewhere between a Canadian Tire. So it's gonna have some of those smaller scale items that you would just be able to pick up in a bag and take home. So we're not expecting big semi-trucks or anything to be delivering frequently. There would be maybe some infrequent larger vehicles, but we believe that the one loading bay will be sufficient. Now, of course, in the event that there is increased vehicle traffic, we do have provisions in the zoning bylaw to delegate or designate a space on on a nearby street as a living space if it comes to it. But we will be monitoring that as the operation unfolds. And then finally, there's the reduction to the Class 1 bicycle parking space requirement from 12 to 6. So in this case, it's where the zoning bylaw has a proviso where you take the greater of a ratio. So in this zone, it's 0.5 per employee, or 1.5 spaces per 100 meters squared of gross floor area. So of course, in this case, the size of the building resulted in the gross floor area providing us the greater bike parking calculation. So in this case, going from 12 to 6, the calculation works out to 5 being the minimum when you go by the employees. So easiest way to think about it is the applicant is requesting to use a lesser calculation instead. That said, they are providing one more than the minimum, which is good. Now, the rationale behind this is that Class 1 spaces are mainly for staff use since they're locked and secured, usually in a secure portion of the building, and aren't meant for shoppers to utilize. In this case, the applicant has advised us there are 10 staff to be hired in total, and it's unlikely all 10 of them will be cycling to the property at the same time. So this does result in a oversupply in bike parking if we stick with the gross floor area calculation. And I will note that zoning bylaw updates are examining this oversupply issue since it has come up on a few files, and it is something we are actively reviewing at this time. So again, these 3 variants I've identified, they have staff support. So I'm going to transition to our next section where we are going to discuss the fence and everything that comes with it. So this fence, it was installed along the Dunsmuir frontage in 2021 without the benefit of a heritage alteration permit. The materials that are present do not comply with the heritage conservation area criteria, and additionally, the fence is also 1.6 meters in height, which is in excess of the 1.2 meter maximum permitted on front lot lines in the VCU MU1 zone. So the materials don't comply with the HCA criteria, which aims to preserve the open vistas throughout the Dunsmuir core, and the height is over the zoning bylaw requirement. So in this case, the 1.2 meter height is not sufficient to secure the garden center, since someone could easily hop over it and help themselves to anything that might be out there. So in this case, the applicant has proposed a metal picket fence to allow for some transparency into the lot and help preserve some of those open views, with the request of a 1.5 meter tall fence to help preserve the privacy, but the security of the garden center. So staff are supportive of this fence's form and character, as well as the 1.5 meter height to the portion of the fence that's going to be in front of basically the garden center. So from where the ILO is to just before where the single family dwelling starts. So that frontage would be that proposed metal fence. The applicant is requesting to retain the existing wooding fence at 1.6 meters in height, and the plan is for this fence to preserve the privacy for the single-family dwelling. So there's no backyard at the single-family dwelling, and as such, the amenity area is really just this front yard. So the expectation is that they would be using this as long as it's a single-family dwelling and someone is living there. The applicant has proposed converting this to a commercial retail unit or potentially demolishing the structure in the future, but there's no set plan or no concrete timeline surrounding this. And the applicant has stated that upon conversion of this building to a CRU or demolition, that the fence would be removed. Now the challenge with this approach is that fencing and assorted site design is usually dealt with at the time of a heritage alteration permit or elsewhere in the community of development permit. So there's no real good control for us to ensure that this fence is removed. So if we were to defer to, say, a tenant improvement or a demolition permit, there's nothing really, there's no real good tool we would be able to ensure that this fence is removed at that time. So our goal, we're trying to shoot for a happy medium in this case. So we proposed a few solutions that could help meet our street frontage goals, as well as try and preserve some modicum of privacy for the area. The first one, of course, was just continuing a 1.5 meter tall fence along the front lot line. The other one is reducing the existing wood fence to 1.2 meters in height, staying to a heritage color, which I'll talk about in a moment here. And as a final shot, we also proposed a covenant. And this covenant basically would be registered on title and would act as a trigger for us when we review a building permit to make sure that this fence is removed. However, all these 3 options were rejected by the applicant. So as such, because staff does not have a good tool to ensure that the fence is removed when the house is to be converted or demolished, we are recommending denial of this particular variance. The file was reviewed by the Heritage Committee in May of 2025, who overall noted support for this proposal. They did make some recommendations, including the registration of the covenant for the fence. staining the fence heritage color to integrate with the proposed metal fence. So that's that green dollop you see in the staff report. They chose a color that would match some of the features inside the ILO to help tie the whole story together, as well as reconsidering pedestrian access from Dunsmuir Avenue to the parking lot. Now this one I just want to flag because the applicant had presented a numerous sort of preemptive variances to give themselves some flexibility if they required it in the future. However, since many of these requests weren't tied to this exact application, we recommended that they just remove these just for clarity and ease of application, and they have done so. So if you read the rationale letter, you'll notice a few things that deleted. This is what's happening, it's just referencing that situation. And as of today's 2 p.m. correspondence deadline, we did receive 5 responses to the notice we sent out on September 4th. We had 3 letters of concern, 1 letter of opposition, and 1 letter of support for the fence itself. So the 3 letters of concern and 1 letter of opposition were related to the laneway. Now, one thing I want to note, of course, is today we are only focusing on the questions that are in the Heritage Alteration Permit and Development Variance Permit. The zoning does allow for this hardware store and garden center to operate in the property, and of course, as a property, they have right to access the laneway. That said, some of the questions related to just how the village will be undertaking maintenance and repair of the lanes, since there will be some increased traffic, and I did touch base with our Public Works Department, who confirmed that this is on their radar, so they already have a lane maintenance and snow control program, and it's something they will be monitoring to ensure that service level is satisfactory, much like the other lanes we have in the downtown core where we do see some commercial traffic. So this is certainly on the operations team's radar. And a few of the letters did note vehicle access off Dunsmuir, and I do want to note that that's not feasible in this case because of the grades coming down from Dunsmuir, and furthermore, that would also be in conflict with our heritage conservation area criteria. And that's the verbal report, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Seamus, that was great. Questions, council?
Thanks for this report, Seamus. Quite detailed as always. Thank you. I'm generally in favor of all of these variances. Again, just to address the letters that came in, I understand the concerns being expressed by some of the neighbors. But as you pointed out, this is a permitted use. They are permitted to access their property from the laneway. We don't really have any discretion in reducing that access or limiting that access in any way. I like the parking area surface being permeable. I am happy with the bicycle parking. Just a question about the fence. Have they agreed to paint the fence if it remains?
That's correct, and it is a condition of the heritage alteration permit.
That they paint it? I'm happy to, personally, I'm happy to leave that fence, the small portion of the fence that would remain in front of that house. Is that the last or second to last, third to last house on there? I know there's 2.
Yeah.
I know there's 2 down at the end, but it's almost the last house on Dunsmuir. I don't imagine it will be there forever, and I can't imagine that they will leave a, let's face it, a not very good fence behind when and if that is redeveloped. So in the time being, if they want to have some privacy from Waverly, I'm happy to leave that up there for now.
Thanks, councillor. Who's next?
Yeah, thanks for this report, Seamus. All I just want to say is that I'll accept the fence as well. I think the privacy is necessary on the streets, and just looking forward to this moving forward. I know that everybody's gone through a lot of everything trying to get this moving forward. I'm looking forward to having the services of the hardware store.
And thanks again for that report. You noted with the fence that we would have opportunity in the new heritage alteration permit to make a stipulation that a fence were changed to trigger the impact. Is that That's my understanding.
That's correct. So if the applicant came in for another heritage alteration permit to do something else to the property, for example, that would also be an opportunity for us to address the fence too.
Right, and would conversion of that house to a commercial property be likely to trigger a HAP? Is that a bit too,
It's hard to say, because when a HAP is triggered, it's usually because there's some sort of exterior alteration. Now, that being said, it's very possible they could take out what's called a tenant improvement and just do interior alterations, and we wouldn't require a HAP. It happens from time to time on the Dunsmuir corner when we see a use going from, let's say, a retail store to a commercial, like a restaurant, for example. We take out a building permit, and as long as there's no changes to the exterior, then a HAP would not be triggered.
okay. I am, like, as Councillor Two and Sullivan have referenced, I'm actually comfortable with allowing the applicant to retain that fence for what is probably, just about the only house. Everything else fronts directly on, and I understand the heritage concerns and the zoning concern, but I'd be willing to do that given that the rest is going to be fenced. Yeah.
Well, I won't beat the dead horse on this one too much, but we did chat about this section in the Heritage Committee that I sat on. It was a bit of a contentious item, I would say, but the fact that any commercial business coming in using that small house next door, they're probably not going to be walled off in the world for practicality and for business reasons alone. I don't see any problem keeping the fence, painting it. Sure, it's not the best fence, but it's our fence, and it keeps it definitely keeps the noise down. A much more high traffic and high noise area than the rest of the village. So for a family living there, it's consideration for noise abatement purposes. Just a question about the lighting, after hours lighting in was that addressed during the heritage alteration permit?
That's correct. So just so I understand, is it like lighting like after the store is closed?
Yeah, for the yard there, like security lights. I can sympathize with the neighbors and for the business owner of not, you don't want to lose a product there, but also the neighbors don't want to be looking at lights glaring down as we do at the dark sky ball.
That's correct.
So, yeah, just to make sure that.
And you are correct. So they are required to provide the downcast and dark skies lightings to avoid that exact scenario, to try and keep the light from interjecting to the other properties. Now that said, I don't know if they have it on a timer, for example, where it shuts off at like 11 at night. Is that kind of what the concern is?
Yeah.
Or is it more just the downcast part of it?
I think it's both.
Both? Okay. Yeah, so definitely on the downcast, and I would just have to follow up if there's any timing of the lights for sure. I think we'd have some, well, we have by law enforcement tools if it came to it, or.
The lights stay on overnight?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We have a violet ribbon.
Okay.
Certainly the
I
downcast.
just can't be
is-
shining light to
That's-
another
That's the
property.
downcast definitely, but there might be security reasons. to
That's
have lights on
right.
during the night.
Yeah.
They have to be downcast.
That's right. But yeah, certainly downcast.
They don't have one on this, it shines through the bedroom.
I'll get to that.
But no, I support the retaining that one section fence, and I think the cast iron or picket fence will look a lot better, and we'll all forget about the fence problem. Yeah, I'll support that.
Okay, thanks, everyone. My only question is, again, related to the alley and access to the garden. So you can access the garden center from the street, because that's where the bicycle parking is. So there is a walkway into the garden center from Dunsmuir? Or
That's
do you have to
correct.
go through the building?
That's correct. You'd have to go through the building.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, and should the alley become a problem, the loading space could be moved to First Street, potentially. For him, that's pretty close, no? I'm just thinking if he is ending up with, I know we have an issue with, with the servicing the Waverly through the alley and taking off bits of the big store or the neighbor's fence. And so these alleys are narrow and hard for big trucks. I don't know how many big trucks he's gonna have, but should that become an issue, that's when we would trigger a move of a loading area to the back, to the street.
Right, so they are proposing like an on-street, off-street loading space on the property, so that is just gonna be on their property, so that's where something like a small goods van could park, but if, like, let's say they have a larger truck that needs to make a delivery, that's where we'd start looking at that on-street loading space provision in the zoning bylaw. So yeah, it wouldn't be a relocation, but more of an activation of another clause.
Right, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm happy to move this along too. The recommendation we need for the fence is in alternatives at the bottom. On page 32, 264. Anybody wants to move that? In all your returns?
I'd be happy to move that, this recommendation is a that and then as amended, so, do I need to state the amendment as inclusion of variance 5?
I think you can just
think they do the heritage
move the
alteration.
alternative. I don't think you need the other.
I don't need to state what the amendment is.
No.
I think I'm fine.
Alternative number one. This is the one.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, so the two resolutions are needed. The first is for the heritage alteration permit. The
Okay,
Top
and then the
one
other.
under the recommendation section, and then the second is for the variance in the alternative section. The permit is drafted with all the requested variances. So for the variance, you just need to approve the permit. It
Okay.
includes all requested, both fences.
Okay. Got it?
Thank you. I think I do have it. Well, I'll start with the council approved heritage alteration permit at 2501 for the property described as Lot A, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan, VIP 84, 382691 Dunsmuir Avenue. And then, and then the council approved development permit DVP 2510 for property described as Lot A, District Lot 21, Nelson District Plan VIP 854 382691 Dunsmuir Avenue.
That's all you need. Accept a seconder. Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Yay, Ilo, Ilo. And next up is the results of the Penrith Road Improvements Public Engagement Session. We don't have Joel, we have Michelle.
You're stuck with me.
Totally different.
Yes, so I'm not the author of this report. However, I am the one presenting tonight. So the engagement that took place for the Penrith Avenue upgrades had some participants in an online survey, and then there was also an in-person pop-up event, and there was attendance there. There were two options presented at the in-person pop-up event. One with parallel parking on both sides with bike lanes and advisory lane concept. The other one was angle parking just on one side of the street, I believe. And then some videos of other options. And so then that's when the one-way version, the one-way option popped to the surface for everyone, and it seemed to become the favored concept. It's a one-way street. Staff have looked at that and have and can confirm that that can be done the one-way. What we do recommend, though, for that to move forward is that you add budget from the linear asset reserve and the community works funds for the 3rd to 4th Street, and that way you would have some continuous motion between 4th and 1st Street. There were other design priorities like wider continuous sidewalks for mobility needs and strollers. Some green space, tree coverage was valued, and some other things. And so the extra block of Penrith would be over just 423,000, just over that. 472,000, and that would be the roads, water, sewer, and storm underneath. Currently, the engineers have been working on the design for the water, sewer, and storm, and waiting for this to come to council. And I've realized as I'm going through the report that they actually are waiting to do the design, so that's why it hasn't come to council. So typically, we actually don't bring designs to council for infrastructure projects for the roads, but and they will start to finish that off if council has no objections to the one-way, and then they would want to tender that. And so the road piece of the project is actually going to take place at a different time than the underground, so because they've already, I believe they've already either put the tender out or they're about to put the tender out for the water and sewers.
So it would be staged.
That part I'm
then?
not too sure about,
Right.
actually. I've just spoken to them.
Okay, great. Questions, council?
Yeah, I've just got one question. Is the 3rd to 4th Street replacement of the sewer and water in our current work plan, in our 5-year work plan, and we're just bringing it forward?
It wasn't actually in the 5 years, actually, but there is enough funding between Community Works Funds and the Linear Asset Reserve to bring that forward.
Okay, but this is something that was gonna have to be done at some point,
That's
and we're just moving it forward now?
Yes, it's definitely in the long-range plan. I just don't, it wasn't in the immediate 5.
Okay. Yeah, no, that answers my question.
I was curious as to why the estimated cost for the extra one block is about the same as the cost for the first 2 blocks. Because we're getting close to $1 million to do 3 blocks here, which doesn't surprise me in the current climate, but I was interested in the difference, if you have any insight.
No, I'd have to get back to you on that.
Right, that's quite okay. And the, probably the same here, is there any indication of the planned road arrangement at this point? Of actually how, I think you just said that, it won't necessarily bring designs back to us, but it was certainly there's a great deal of community interest
Yeah.
in what that design will be, and
Yeah.
is there a point at which we see it before it, not necessarily we see it, but everybody sees it before it goes?
I'd have to make that request, I think. I'm not 100% sure how these infrastructure projects work logistically, to be honest, with designs. Usually they go forward and then they get used to tender the project. So definitely if there's a concept and a possibility that can happen, I would definitely make that request. But if you want to defer your decision to make sure that happens, then we might have to wait, because I'm not 100% sure how it works.
Yeah, so I
Sorry.
think what we could do is, in the motion, request that staff bring back, with the amendment to the financial plan, a plan for redesign. Because we did have a whole lot of engagement on this, and it seems strange to me to move forward without us or the community seeing what will be implemented. And there was a link to the engagement site, but the one-way model is not there for people to see what that actually looks like. And then my other question was, did we engage, so I know we handed out to the first 2 blocks, information about engagement sessions and what was planned for their streets. I don't think we did that to the 3rd to 4th block.
Right.
So they're gonna be very surprised when people show up digging up their road. So I think we do need to bring that back with design in a public meeting and like, so the community understands what we're doing and what came out of that engagement session. And I appreciate the report. It's great. It's got all the things in it. But, you know, the community may or may not be watching or reading our agenda packages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So,
Okay.
I just had a question that's a little out of scope for this, but given the level of support for that one-way, were there any discussions among staff how that would work the transportation master plan if there was an alteration, maybe stagger one-way streets, given that, you know, Penrith isn't, you know, that much smaller than Maryport and so on. Those smaller streets are definitely congested. Is that something that might have informed that process a bit?
Yeah, I think that there's been talk at the staff level that, you know, this would be what would you call like a pilot kind of
Yeah.
thing? And then it definitely would be thought of, if it works and everything's like, for sure. And especially if that was, an interest.
That kind of thing that is gonna work is really gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think Mayor Brown's point about community expectation is really important. I don't want us to get to a point where council approves detailed road design. You know, that's not the point. I'm not asking for them to bring back a road alignment design that we approve or don't approve. I think that's part of the engagement process, but I do think that you're absolutely right. That block is not going to yet be aware that this good thing is going to happen. Yeah, we need to find a way to make sure that happens.
Yeah, and this isn't just a repaving with some realignment, it's a complete restructuring of the street. It's not a normal street design that would be staff-led, it's a council, I think it's clearly a.
On a one-way street in a tiny little town.
Yeah,
So,
People gonna look at it.
yeah, so we need the,
am I hearing just from council that you might want a little bit of, like not like consultation, like not engagement, but like some information, to that one block as well, like do a bit more communication, I guess, about that. And then also maybe like a mock-up concept, possibly what it might
Yeah,
look like,
just
maybe not a
drawings.
design or something, but,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
I understand what you're asking. Yeah.
And is it appropriate to put that in the same, like when you bring back the amended financial plan? Or do you want to do those as two separate motions?
I think maybe not when I bring back, like no later than the amendment of the financial plan maybe, but like maybe if they want to get going on the tender and everything, I might get them to mock that up pretty quick and bring it right back. Like as quick as we can, maybe. And the financial plan might not come to you until December or something. the amendment.
They can still move forward though, with it.
They wouldn't move forward with working on the design, I think, and unless you guys are approving it and you just want to see it come back, I guess. Like if you could make a change to, like, do you mean if you could say, no, we don't want a one-way now that we've seen it or something, then I think that they wouldn't want them to start a design on that. So yeah, if you want them to just start moving forward on it, you just want to actually see the concept, then that would work, if that's what you want. So it's,
I feel
depends.
like we're at the one-way concept and accepting that.
Okay.
But we're not trying to surprise the third block.
Okay,
I think
And
that's
maybe,
where
yeah.
Feels where we're at, where I feel like council wants to go
Yeah.
forward, but also, that's,
Yeah.
so I do agree with
Yeah.
Karen significantly on that. That's-
so we can move it
that's the
forward.
transparency that we've been missing. for the
Yeah.
third block.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree on the transparency. So we can move it forward with the, working on the design, as long as we bring the concept back to you for, and put it on the Engage Comox Valley, maybe
Yeah.
the concept, and,
That would be great.
and then communicate with that third block in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get it, okay.
Can I be absolutely clear then? Because I thought we were, and Mayor's comments maybe think slightly differently. Is there a future council decision on the design, or is it information only? Because I want them to be able to move forward with tendering, particularly for the sewer storm and all of that. I hope they could
That is-
be tendering that ASAP,
Yeah.
and that I don't want to delay this project any more than necessary.
Okay, so maybe then I'll suggest that we approve the storm and sewer replacement, and that work is already planned and ready to go. And now we're really sausage making, so I apologize in advance for this. And we also make a motion to bring the street design back to council, along with, at the same time, we do consultation with the third block. Does that make sense?
So you want the actual design, because I don't know when, yeah, you want the
It
actual.
doesn't have to be the
Or-
engineered design,
I see.
it needs to be, what's this gonna look like?
Yeah, the
Mock-up for us,
concept
Show
mock-up,
us a
okay.
photo or whatever.
Okay,
I know,
Yeah.
because they did that on site.
no, that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you meant,
We just wanna see what it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
And we want the third block to see that, and the first two blocks to see that at the same time.
okay. And that's, bring that back forward, and you might have some decisions, or we can move forward on the project.
I
That-
think we move forward on the project, and
Okay.
if that comes to us and we go, oh my God, this is from the community freaks out, then we deal with that at the time. But I
Okay.
think we're gonna do storm and sewer anyway.
Yeah.
We're gonna pave the road anyway,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
I think we can safely move it forward. I'm just not sure how to exactly craft that, those motions.
well, I think you can make the motion about the, if you want the third, you can make that the way it is.
Yeah.
And then you could just make a motion
Second
to,
motion.
move forward with the design, but bring back, a concept, of drawing and meaningful, communication with all blocks of the street on the new, on the one-way concept. Does that,
Would that language then to the third block kind of say, this is what we're doing and we're including you? Kind of language, I think, like, not
Yeah.
a choice for them, just sort of, this is what we're doing, we're including you, oh,
Yeah.
that's okay, kind of thing.
I believe we did hear from people on those blocks at the engagement who were like, you should do our block too. So I don't think
Yeah,
they're
well,
gonna be.
it feels like this will work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm also very willing at this point to affirm the one-way concept. You know, so that there's no doubt in staff's mind, we're not going to see it and then go, on second thoughts, not one way, because that is
Okay.
a long way down the design path.
yeah, that would make a big
Would
difference.
cause a lot of extra
I
costs.
think we're all on the same page, just
Okay.
the third block's in the same.
Parking on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
That was.
Well, we don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't know what the decision was. Was there parking on both sides? Are there sidewalks on both sides? Are there bike lanes? We have no idea. We didn't see the drawing. So we don't know
Yeah.
what we're approving, really. So
One
it's
way.
hard to approve.
One way, that's what we got.
Yeah,
We just
sorry
it's
about
one
this.
way.
We're
This
moving
is-
a
yeah.
one-way street that goes from third to first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or from
I mean, with hindsight, with everything you're saying,
Make it
yeah,
good.
ideally, that would have come forward.
yeah.
Apologize.
Because that's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, totally, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think it's appropriate to bring back the design, and move forward with the storm and water at the same time. No?
That's the part that's confusing me, because if we are moving forward with the storm and water
Okay,
already,
then I- we
but
don't
then
need
I
to say
just want to
anything
make
about
sure
that.
we can move forward with the road, like
The
working on the
design.
road design.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Staff or council says one way, yes, it'll be the third block.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Someone want to craft, okay, so
Sorry about
we have a motion that we can do right now to approve the expenditure.
Yeah.
I'll move that council receive the public engagement report for the Penrith Avenue Roads and Utilities Upgrade Project. And that council approve the expenditure of up to $472,500 for Penrith 3rd to 4th Street infrastructure replacement with $307,500 to be funded through the linear asset renewal reserve, and $165,000 to be funded through the Community Works Fund's gas tax reserve. And that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the 2025-2029 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Now we need sorry, go for it.
I'll move that staff bring forward a design drawing of the proposed one-way street and engage and further engage the block from 4th to 3rd to let them know that they're included in this project now.
Okay, seconder? Okay, all in favor? Do you have some?
I'm concerned about the word engage.
Inform.
Yeah.
Inform.
Yeah.
Okay, seconder?
Friendly amendment?
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
And thank you for your patience.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. For trying to be
Back
Joel.
at you.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Okay, next up is,
Oh, the one we built that way.
it's the zoning bylaw review and update. Excellent.
I'm just gonna sit down
You like the lights and stuff.
here. Yeah, maybe the light should be down, there is a
This end.
There's somewhere there.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. And we have for you here a draft zoning bylaw. And this has been prepared by consultants with Urban Systems and lots of involvement of staff. This has been a huge amount of work. And we are, in many ways, a highly technical exercise. You would believe the spreadsheets in the background of the different zones. I'm really happy to bring this to you tonight, and I'll turn it over to the consultants to lead the presentation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brittany, when ready.
Thank you, Courtney. Good evening, Mayor and Council. One moment, please, and I'll pull up the presentation slides here. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having us today. My name is Brittany Tuttle, and I'm joined by my colleague Karen Gross. We're located here in the Victoria office of Urban Systems, and we have been working with staff, as Courtney mentioned, very closely on a comprehensive review and update to the zoning bylaw over the last 6 months or so now. We've had a lot of fun working on this project, and we're really excited to be here with you today to present the draft version. If you recall, we introduced this project to you back in March, and we've been working really hard since then on getting this draft ready for your review and for the public's contemplation as well. So just a quick agenda, providing an overview for you of what we're going to be presenting to you today. We're going to give you a quick recap on the project itself, what the purpose of the zoning bylaw update was. This will be a timeline of the engagement initiatives. We're also going to dive into some of the key changes that were made to the bylaw. I will just preface that these are the changes that we're discussing today are just some of the key highlighted changes that we thought may be worthwhile to highlight for you. They're not all of the changes to the bylaw. There are many, many, many changes made to this bylaw, so we can't go over every single one. So if you have any specific questions about some other changes, we're happy to discuss or answer those at the end of the presentation. We're just going to highlight the key changes. And then we also have a couple of items then where we require your direction this evening that we will discuss before we wrap up with some next steps. Okay, so jumping right in, what is the zoning bylaw? I believe that we presented this to you back in March, so just a recap from that discussion then. A zoning bylaw is a regulatory tool that translates land use policy from the community's official community plan, or OCP, into a prescriptive set of regulations that outline how land can be used in a community. And these bylaws have two components, a map and a set of regulations that apply rules to property. And within a community, each property is applied a zone, which categorizes how that land may be used. And these zones are typically tied to an OCP's land use map. And the zones usually have categories of things such as residential, commercial, etc. What does a zoning bylaw regulate? A wide array of things, really. They regulate what you can build or operate on a property. This is known as a permitted use. So, for example, in a residential zone, a townhouse could be a permitted use, or an apartment. In a commercial zone, a permitted use could be a retail store. They also regulate the minimum size that a lot or a parcel must be, and this is largely for the purpose of subdivision. They also regulate where and how buildings and structures may be located on a property through things like front yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, lot coverage, for example, so that's how much of a property that a building can occupy, height restrictions, how many stories a building can be, as well as density permissions. They also regulate off-street parking and loading requirements for different uses. So, for example, a office use may require a different number of parking stalls than apartment use. And they also regulate things like landscaping. And this might include requirements for specific types of landscaping features, such as how tall a retaining wall can be, how tall a fence may be, and different types of fences that may be permitted, as well as things like street. Why are we updating the zoning bylaw? Well, there's a number of reasons. The first one being that the village is updating its official community plan, and we want to ensure that the new zoning bylaw is a means of implementing that OCP and the land use direction provided there. The zoning bylaw was adopted, the existing bylaw was adopted almost 10 years ago, and so we are acknowledging that there are maybe some land use challenges that exist in the community that we're aiming to sort of rectify through this updated bylaw, and also to clarify and simplify terms and regulations in the bylaw to make it easier to use. And finally, we are updating the bylaw to address new legislative requirements that were brought into effect in 2023 that require zoning bylaws and OCPs to be updated by the end of this year to demonstrate that enough land has been designated to meet 20-year housing needs that were outlined in interim housing needs report completed late last year. Well, since kicking off the project in February, we have now completed a first full draft of the bylaw and the associated zoning map. So last time we spoke to you was in March. You can see on this figure here that we are in September where the star is. So we brought the bylaw forward to yourselves, mayor and council, as well as committees of the village, such as the APC. We have also presented the bylaw to Comox First Nation a couple of weeks ago. And these presentations have been to share some of the key changes that have been incorporated into the new bylaw. Very similar presentation is what we'll be giving yourselves today. We're also going to be welcoming any input from the public following this presentation in the latter half of September and into the early half of October. And then we will be incorporating any key changes that may be needed to the bylaw to prepare it for first reading by mayor and council later this year. A quick overview of community engagement opportunities. So far, this engagement has included a project page on the Engage Comox Valley website, which is acting as a landing page for the project, letting the community know that this project is underway. It's a general place for folks to find any information about the project, such as frequently asked questions about what is the zoning bylaw and what the upcoming opportunities for community involvement are. On August 19th, we met with members of the local development community to discuss the key changes that were made to the zoning bylaw and also seek any input that they had at that time. And as I mentioned before, we met with the Comox First Nation a couple of weeks ago, and we met with the Advisory Planning Commission just last week. In the coming weeks, staff will be meeting with both the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee as well as the Heritage Committee to seek their input on those changes to the bylaw as well. And there will be a virtual open house as well as an in-person open house in early September on October 7th, early October, on October 7th and October 8th. Members of the committee will also be invited to provide any comments that they might have on the bylaw through the Engage Comox Valley page where the draft will be posted. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kara. Hey, thanks, Brittany. So yeah, as Brittany said, there are flexibility changes that were made to the bylaw, and so tonight we're just going to focus on the big ones, the ones that sort of have the most impact to how the bylaw is presented and was used. The first of which being the revised bylaw format. So with this update, we have adopted a new interactive bylaw format, bylaw template that relies on tables to present regulations for development, consolidates lists of permitted uses, setbacks, height standards, etc. into tables, and the intent of that is to make the bylaw shorter and also make it easier for people to find things, and also ensure that regulations about a particular thing are all in one place. So you don't have to look all over the bylaw for your fence regulations. All of your fence regulations are in the fence table. The new bylaw format also organizes the zones according to zone category and encourages the user to review all the parts of the bylaw as it sort of acts as a through document as opposed to independent pieces that often lead to certain regulations getting missed by non-planners and planners. And overall, the intent is that the new bylaw format will improve the ease of use for both the public and staff to make it a more accessible document. So a good example of how this looks in practice is shown on your screen here. On the left, you have how the zoning bylaw currently presents regulations about urban agriculture. It's a lot of text, and as you can see, there's some terms in italics, and those represent defined terms, whereas on the right, you have similar regulations presented in a table format that's very clearly defined what you're looking at, and defined terms in this new version are delineated in a different color, the blue, and they're also hyperlinked. So if you were to click on the word accessory, for example, it would actually bring up the definition of accessory for you. So just really clear and easy for folks to understand what's going on. Next, we'll talk about some of the changes to the zones themselves. As I said, with the change in zone format, the zones themselves have also been updated into this table category or table presentation. And so where zones are similar and in a category like the residential zone category or rural zones, which is what is shown on the screen here, rather than having several pages dedicated to an individual zone, you have all the regulations for all the like zones shown together. So on the right you see the forest stewardship greenway zone and the recreation tourism zone, and you can see all of the permitted uses that are permitted in one or the other, or both, or neither. This just allows for easier use by the public. If somebody has a certain zone applied to their property, and they might wonder what it looks like for their neighbor or for a different use altogether. It's easier to see in this version rather than having to leaf through a bunch of pages and sections all over the bylaw. So part of that is also consolidating existing zones. This is
largely to minimize redundancies that are existing in the bylaw, and also to, again, align with the village's new OCP land use map, just to make sure existing uses and desired uses are represented well within zoning as well as in the OCP. As a result of the zone consolidation we did, the total number of zones has been reduced down to 26 from the original 38. And you see in the breakdown there that this most significant change has actually taken place to the residential zones from 14 to 6. And this is largely because there was a lot of zones that applied to just 1 or 2 parcels. And they actually had very similar regulations throughout. So rather than, again, having them listed independently on several pages each, they've been consolidated to 1 or 2 zones that better represent what the intent of the residential use is. And largely, the residential zones were consolidated as well due to the implementation of small-scale multi-unit housing regulation requirements from the province, which I'll get into a little bit later. Next slide, breaking out, show the total zoning map here. This is the new zoning map according to our zone consolidation. And the next slide as well shows a little zoomed in version of what's going on sort of in the core of the village. So, residential zones. Like I said, this is where the most changes happened, and the main reason is because the village is choosing to proactively implement small-scale multi-unit housing, which I will call SMA for the sake of all our ears. So back in December of 2023, the province introduced Bill 44, which required local governments to permit up to 3 or 4 units on any lot that was previously restricted to single-family uses. But there were some other criteria, which you see in the table here. The community had to have an urban containment boundary, and the single-family use had to be within that urban containment boundary. The lot size had to be less than 4,050 square meters, and then depending on how big or small it was the 3 or 4 unit requirement. And then all of the lots had to be serviced by municipal water and municipal sewer systems. In Cumberland's case, at that time, all of these criteria were met except for that last one starred there on the screen, where your population had to be greater than 5,000. So at the time, the village had just shy of 4,500 persons for the 2021 census, and it is anticipated by the 2026 census or release of that data that the village will have exceeded that population if it hasn't already. So at that time, the village will be required to update its zoning bylaw to implement the SMA, and so that is why we're doing it now rather than having to come back in when that census data is released in a year or so's time. So what this looks like in Cumberland is that we've redesignated all applicable restricted zones, so again, the ones that were limited to single family or single family plus a suite, into a new infill residential zone that aligns with the province's SMA policy manual. The policy manual is a document that the province released to sort of support local governments in implementing the SMA requirements, include things like standardized site standards, such as setbacks, height maximums, lot coverages, as well as parking requirements, and the density permissions up to 4 dwelling units. And then we also, while consolidating the low-density residential zones, we also looked at opportunities to consolidate existing multi-unit residential zones to streamline future rezonings for additional multi-unit residential development. Because again, a lot of the existing multi-unit zones apply to just 1 or 2 parcels, and so there was a lot of opportunity to minimize redundancy there. So on this slide here, this just shows you residential zoning, and that new infill zone is the yellowy orange that you see that applied to most parcels. Now, you'll also notice there's a sort of brighter red-orange color shown on the sort of west end of Dunsmuir there. And that is because there are some known sanitary sewer capacity concerns in that area. And so the province does allow local governments to apply for extensions of SMA applicability, and that is what the intention is here. Essentially, this zone, there's a new zone applied to these parcels for the purpose of ensuring that the density remains at an appropriate rate for the existing infrastructure there. And then at the time that the village completes the upgrades, all of those parcels will be rezoned to match that infill zone there that is applied everywhere else, that yellow. One more notable thing that we've done in the residential zones is we've established a residential heritage setback area along Camp Road. And that setback area establishes a reduced minimum front setback of 0 meters, so right up to the property line. And it also establishes a maximum front setback of 2 meters. So if and when a site gets redeveloped, the new structure or the renovated structure has to still match the siting of all the adjacent properties. And just to, the intent there is to help preserve the existing heritage and historic character of Camp Road. Now, as far as the non-residential zones go, those have also been consolidated as much as possible, or better organized, reorganized to represent existing and desired uses. In the rural zones, this meant a shift from 4 to 2 zones. In the commercial zones, there was actually just 4. There was one that applied to the village core, and then there was three additional commercial zones that applied to single lots. So those have been consolidated with some other existing light industrial uses to create a new service industry zone, sort of replace that. And then the original sort of village core zone has been expanded upon to create a sort of gradual transition from the village outward to create a more gradual transition of land uses between the village core and the surrounding neighborhoods. And we've also made an effort to more clearly separate institutional uses from commercial or residential uses that are happening in the village core. So those are now captured under a new public use zone that really just makes it clear what is what. So next, talk about the revised approach to agriculture. So broadly, we've expanded agricultural permissions for the purpose of advancing the village's goals around food security and creating local food systems. Whereas the existing bylaw kind of speaks to agriculture in a broad sense, we have created a new urban agriculture definition that really speaks to a new flexible way of folks being able to grow their own food, whether that's on a residential property or in a multi-unit residential setting, as well as on institutional public use and sort of commercial lands as well. The result, community gardens are now permitted in those zones. Urban agriculture is now permitted in all residential mixed-use zones, and we've reiterated that greenhouses and other forms of non-soil-based agriculture are permitted in all industry-type zones. Another main change coming to the zoning bylaw is how we've structured the home occupation regulations. So we've taken the existing home occupation regulations and we've restructured them to create a tiered hierarchy of uses. And the intent there is to acknowledge that different home occupations may be appropriate in different areas of the community. What you might be permitted to do in an apartment unit, such as working from home, having a small accounting business, is very different from what might be appropriate as a use on a larger, more rural lot where you have an acre or so to bang around and not disturb your neighbors. So these new regulations offer more flexibility regarding home occupation uses, They also make it clearer for staff to understand what somebody's proposing when they come in with a business license application. And they do this by establishing clear requirements for the amount of space occupied by the use through restrictions to floor area, depending on where the scale of occupation is being requested, as well as the number of parking spaces required, the number of on-site non-resident employees permitted, as well as the number of visitors, guests, non-employee users of the home occupation. So where there was previously just permitted home occupation, kind of more broadly, there's now 5 home occupation classifications. And largely, that actually is 3, and under which there's also bed and breakfast and vacation rentals sort of captured within there, because they are, in fact, a business operating out of a home as well. So the minor home occupation, this is something that's intended to be operated solely in the dwelling unit, and it uses up to 20 square meters of floor area. And so this is something that you would see in an apartment or some sort of multi-unit, mixed unit type residence, where aspects of the business operations really should not be detectable from outside of the dwelling unit itself. Then you have your standard home occupation, which is intended to be operated within either the dwelling unit or accessory building, and can go up to 50 square meters of floor area, and can employ a single non-resident on-site employee. And then you have your major home occupations, which are intended to be, again, operated in a dwelling unit or accessory building up to 100 square meters, and can employ 2 on-site non-resident employees. Then you also have your bed and breakfast accommodation, which is actually a new use being introduced by law. That's because in most communities, bed and breakfast is a use that's permitted. And so often people look to the bylaw to find out where that is permitted, and it currently wasn't, but it does function similarly to a vacation rental. The only main difference being that a bed and breakfast typically, and the way it's defined in the bylaw now, it is required to be operated out of bedrooms within a home, so you have somebody there providing breakfast, and it's less sort of invasive to a community's housing supply than vacation rentals can be because of that ownership aspect. And then vacation rentals, this is basically unchanged from where it was. And so previously vacation rentals were only permitted in one of the residential zones. And so that remains the same. So despite the new inflow zone sort of expanding, the vacation rental use itself is only permitted on the parcels where it was permitted before. So that hasn't changed at all. Okay, next we're going to talk about landscaping. So landscaping, as Brittany mentioned before, can include, and in this case does include, screening and fence, retaining wall, impermeable surfaces, all of that good stuff. We took the existing landscape requirements that were previously applicable only to new accessory dwelling units, and we've applied them across all forms of multi-unit residential development. And so this means that landscaping requirements are quite a bit more prescriptive on the broader application of them, but they are what was already there, just expanded. And this means that prescriptive landscape requirements are within the zoning, and this just means that whenever somebody comes with a building permit application, they're required to achieve these requirements, which includes things like minimum a number of trees per dwelling unit, so that when they do end up developing on their site, you don't lose out on that sort of form and character element that is brought by good landscaping. And that the real intent of introducing or sort of expanding those prescriptive landscape requirements is to help achieve some of the village's goals around improving and retaining the village's existing tree canopy, as well as streamlining development, and sort of offloading that landscaping requirement typically triggered through a development permit to the building permit stage, and then as a result, sort of softening the impact of infill development on neighborhoods because they are automatically required to make sure the lot is developed nicely, as opposed to having to wade through the development permit process, etc. It's very clear what is required. We've also clarified screening requirements for not incompatible, but perhaps incompatible land uses to support better transitions between these uses, especially sort of between the more industrial, service industrial, service commercial type uses and residential uses. And this means that we've established both minimum and maximum heights for things like fences, landscape screens, such as vegetative fences or hedges, and tiered retaining walls as well. And then we also have introduced a new impermeable surface maximum that functions similarly to a lot coverage maximum. Basically, lot coverage represents buildings, but it doesn't speak to any of the hard surfacing like driveways or sidewalks. So impermeable surface maximum does sort of account for those things. And the intent with that is to limit the amount of hard surfacing that you see when a site is redeveloped for the purpose of improving stormwater management and reducing surface runoff. Okay, we're going to talk about parking and loading, everyone's favorite. On the broad scale, the parking and loading requirements have been very largely consolidated, reduced, and simplified. They previously were listed per use per zone, and now they're just clearly defined per use. They've also been largely reduced on the whole, so and that's sort of in response to the consistent variance requests that the village has received for parking, as well as the downtown parking study that the village had done earlier this year, late last year. And we also, through that process of consolidating, reducing, and simplifying, we established very clear parking minimums and very clear parking maximums so that it can kind of strike that balance of an appropriate level of parking in conjunction with the village's current on-street parking supply. Another thing we did is we created distinct parking requirements for the village core that are different than outside of the village core. And then we also updated requirements for specific user groups. So making sure that barrier-free parking requirements cannot be gotten out of. You can't vary them. You have to deliver on accessible parking. Courtesy parking, visitor parking, electric vehicle parking, those are all now very clearly defined. And the requirements associated with them are also very clearly defined so that developers know exactly what they're getting into when they're looking through the bylaw. And finally, we also clarified regulations pertaining to bicycle parking. And that includes both short-term parking, like your outdoor bike racks outside of the store, as well as your long-term biking facilities, like a bike cage or an interior, sort of more structured bike parking facility. So this next slide shows you where those village core parking requirements are applicable. Like I said, largely right along Dunsmuir there, Penrith and Derwent. And then the other significant thing that was changed with the parking loading requirements was updating existing cash and lieu provisions to support regional consistency. So where there was previously sort of a cash and lieu amount for the BCMU that was quite a bit higher than all other areas, we sort of brought that up to a level that is more reflective of what it actually costs a community when insufficient parking is provided or not provided therefore, and as well as it reflects what's going on in other communities. In Courtney, they actually only charge $5,600 per parking space, but they actually only permit folks to provide cash in lieu in one zone. Whereas in Comox, they actually charge $11,500 per parking space. So we're actually coming in below what's going on there. And then I'm going to pass it back to Brittany to about the items that are requiring your direction tonight. Thanks, Kara. So I noted in the council report, there's a few items that we are seeking direction from council on tonight. And we'll start with pre-zoning of the Bevan industrial lands as the first item. So at the March 24th City of Full meeting earlier this year, council received the employment lands inventory assessment and fiscal economic analysis report for these lands, which provided an overview and inventory of the village's industrial, service, commercial, and institutional lands, in addition to Bevan lands. And this included fiscal and economic impact analysis associated with future development opportunities for the Bevan industrial lands. The report recommended that the village consider rezoning these lands as an industrial zone rather than a holdings type zone, and that land use regulations be implemented to encourage building intensive forms of industrial development. So pre-zoning the land in the Bevan area can support implementing the Bevan Industrial Lands Concept Plan, which the conceptual master plan for the Bevan Industrial Lands was approved by council in 2020. Per this concept plan, the industrial lands are to provide for a range of light and intensive industrial uses, including heavy industry, extraction and processing, silviculture, storage, food processing facilities, recycling and disposal facilities, amongst many other types of industrial uses. And so as such, we are proposing to pre-zone the Bevan lands under the new service industry I-1 zone and industrial I-2 zones to better align with the village's long-term vision for these lands. So the service industry I-1 zone, which we are proposing to apply to Area D, which is the area of the eastern portion of this map shown here. That area is intended to promote less intensive industrial development. We are proposing to zone areas A, B, and C to the west side of Bevan Road, as shown on the map, as the industrial I-2 zone, which is intended to designate and preserve land for intensive industrial development and permit a range of intensive industrial uses such as industrial automotive and equipment services, natural resource extraction, and gardens, and some others. Also note that the existing CBRD waste facility is proposed to keep its existing refuse facility zoning under the refuse industrial I-3 zone to acknowledge that that parcel's existing use is anticipated to continue as part of implementation of the Bevan concept plan. And I'll just also note that the full regulations for the I-1 and I-2 zones that I noted, as well as the I-3 zone, can be found in the draft zoning bylaw. So here is a map of the zoning bylaw, which we saw a little bit earlier in the presentation, but we have highlighted in the red box the area in question in the northern portion of the village where Bevan is. So you can see, if you look in the bottom left of the slide here, you can see a little bit on the map. There's that lighter blue color, which is the I-1 zone area, and then the sort of teal color, which is the I-2 zone area, and then the navy is the I-3 zone area. Next items requiring council direction for this evening are related to off-street parking and building requirements, specifically in the village core. And just a quick refresher on the village core parking area that Carol provided you an overview of. Here is the area in question that we're going to be chatting about. In April, council received a presentation from ISL Engineering on the findings of the 2024 Village of Cumberland Downtown Parking Study. And the objective of that study was to establish the existing parking conditions for on-street parking within the downtown area and to identify any potential parking demand issues. So that study found that in the village core, parking utilization is below the ideal utilization for a commercial area, which suggested that there is enough on-street parking to accommodate users in the village core. The study also found that along Grensmere Avenue, only 19% of vehicles parked for periods longer than 1.5 hours, and most of those vehicles belong to individuals who reside in the area or nearby. These findings suggest that the existing capacity of on-street parking in the village core could support further reductions in off-street parking and loading requirements. So given those findings, we are seeking council's direction on 2 opportunities to streamline off-street parking and loading requirements for the village core this evening. The first one being to remove off-street parking and loading requirements for non-residential and non-hotel, hostel, and motel uses in the village core. To alleviate development constraints in more dense pedestrian-oriented commercial areas, other communities are opting to remove off-street parking and loading requirements altogether for uses other than residential and tourist accommodation type uses in their downtown key growth areas. In the context of Cumberland, this approach would serve to reduce the overall cost of development in the village core, while also reducing the number of parking variances received by the village for changes of use for an existing development. The second item for consideration that we are asking council tonight is to remove cash in lieu provisions for residential and hotel, hostel, and motel uses. The current zoning bylaw permits developers to provide cash in lieu of parking at required parking spaces associated with residential and tourist accommodation uses throughout the village. However, the downtown parking study found that there are vehicles utilizing street parking for more than 8 hours at a time. And staff are concerned that residents and overnight visitors to the area may be relying on on-street parking spaces due to a lack of availability in the off-street parking spaces for these residential and accommodation type uses. So to minimize the potential of new development to generate additional on-street parking demand, other communities do not provide an option for cash in lieu of required parking for these types of uses. As such, removing cash in lieu for residential and tourist accommodation uses would help to ensure that future development of this nature can accommodate its users' long-term parking needs. So a few next steps beyond this evening. As I noted earlier, there are some upcoming engagement opportunities for the public in which they can review and provide their input on the draft zoning bylaw. So I have those dates noted again on this slide here for the open houses. And as I mentioned before as well, we're aiming to bring the bylaw back to council for first reading sometime later this fall, after there has been an opportunity to review the input provided from other user groups, the committees of council, as well as council yourselves. And so for the report that you will have received, there are 3 recommendations tonight related to those items in which I know that we're seeking direction from you on, and that is to endorse the rezoning from Devon industrial lands to align with the village's long-term vision for this area as established in the Devon industrial lands concept plan from 2020. To direct staff to revise the draft zoning bylaw to remove off-street parking and loading requirements for non-residential and non-hotel, hostel, and motel uses in the village core, and to direct staff to revise the draft zoning bylaw to remove cash and parking provisions for residential and hotel, hostel, and motel uses. And thank you so much for having us tonight. We'll leave it at that for any questions or comments.
Thank you both so much. Yes, questions, council?
I've got some procedure questions, and then I've got some questions about stuff that's actually in the bylaw, so should I start with that?
Yeah, can I just clarify first? You are looking for feedback specifically on the 3 items that are in the recommendations. Do you want our feedback on the whole bylaw right now, or will we see it again and do that at that point, given that it's 7:15?
That's one of my questions.
Yeah.
So the next time we have planned to bring the zoning bylaw back to council would be for first reading. So any comments that you have on the draft, on any topic in the draft, we would like to hear tonight. Don't restrict yourselves, although I do realize it's 7:15. And we highlighted those 3 questions because we really wanted to make sure we got council endorsement on the first, and then really needed that extra council input on the other 2.
Okay, go for it, Councilor.
Okay, so to that then, I would like to see this, because we're gonna be pressed for time tonight, I'd like to see this come back after the engagement period, so that we can go over the bylaw as a whole without a presentation, in light of all the feedback that we received. I think if the feedback and the engagement's going to be meaningful, we should have a chance to look at that feedback and weigh in on it. I would similarly like to do exactly the same thing with the official community plan. The engagement period for that is closing at the end of the month. I'd like us to have a chance with a full council, because 2 of our members were missing last time, go over the OCP as well with all of the feedback that's been received. We can discuss all of that. So, yeah. Is that possible? Do you need a motion
Yes.
for that, or?
Absolutely, that's possible. If we take that approach, we will not be able to meet the provincial deadline of having the bylaws adopted before the end of 2025. I don't know what the consequences are for that. We would certainly be able to show progress and could potentially still have first reading completed within 2025. And the second part, do I need a motion? I'm just looking to my colleagues here.
A motion to, sorry.
Yes, I think so.
Table it?
I think yes, if council would like
Defer it
to see the draft of the OCP and zoning bylaw again, a motion would be good in light of the implications for the provincial deadline.
Just speaking to that, I think there's still time. We've got 2 meetings in October. We could do OCP on one of them, and then bylaws on the second. And then we would have 2 meetings in November to do first and second, and then 3rd reading in November, and we would still have, could do adoption on the last meeting in December. Or am I missing something?
The revision, the time to do the revisions, I think.
Yeah, a couple things. After engagement, we prepare a report of the engagement for council so that you would see a summary of everything, and we're just relying on what you had been participating in yourselves, and that takes a little bit of time. So we were aiming for, I think, I can't remember if it was the 1st or 2nd meeting of November for that. For both the OCP and the zoning bylaw, we wouldn't be able to get that back to you before then, due to the time it takes to prepare that report, and then it has to be ready a couple of weeks before the end meeting for the agenda deadline. So then I think we are bumping up.
So would we have given first reading then before we saw that report?
So you'd receive the report of engagement and a revised bylaw with a recommendation for first reading all together at one meeting in November. That's the track we've been on to meet the provincial deadline. And you're hearing this information, you haven't heard this detail before, so they're sharing this scheduling detail, you know.
It's, how do the rest of you guys feel? Is that gonna be enough time for us to look over the engagement and make recommendations at first reading?
Well, what I'm hearing is that we received the engagement report and the draft bylaw that staff has taken into account that they feel they need to for engagement. We received that engagement report and first reading at the same meeting. And between first and second reading is another time for quite substantial reading if need be. So is it that point where we hold a committee of the whole beforehand and we do it, or a long council meeting for that engagement report, and then we give our feedback at first reading of what we'd like to see for second.
In between first and second reading? A committee of the whole in between first and second reading to go over it?
I'm not sure if the committee of the whole on October 6th.
Yeah, so we have a cow at the end of October, and then regular council November 10th, and then committee of the whole and regular council on the 24th.
A couple of options on October 6th council, we could basically council could continue this discussion on the zoning bylaw. That would be the same week as the public engagement events. And that would theoretically keep us on track. And I suppose the other piece of information is that if we did present to council the results of engagement and an amended bylaw recommended for first reading, at that meeting, council could certainly say, we're not ready to give first reading now, refer this back to staff for X, Y, and Z.
Okay. I think that would work for me. What I'm trying to do is I just want to make sure that we as a council have the time to look at and engage with all of the feedback that we're going to receive on both of these large, lengthy documents. People are spending hours and hours reading them, and are going to have comments, and I want to give full weight to those comments and understand what the concerns are and come to some good decisions.
Yeah, agree.
I just think,
I support that. I am not willing to risk any lateness on any federal stuff ever.
Yeah, well,
those are not chances I'm willing to take.
it's provincial.
Provincial.
Yeah.
Sure.
You don't know what, I mean, as long as you show progress, there's no monetary fine towards this, is there?
We don't know.
Yeah, I really haven't heard.
Deadline.
Yeah, I haven't heard.
Like, I think it's more important in a way, well, no, I feel it's more important to make the engagement process legitimate versus trying to meet some deadline which may or may not have ramifications. I can't see that being particularly heavy-handed if we're a couple of weeks shy of a couple of weeks late. So.
It sounds to me like staff has found a way for us to probably do both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we're not going to get through even, I have quite a few.
I've got 2.5 pages of notes.
Yeah, I suspect that we all have a bit of things, so,
For the
yeah.
date of the committee of the whole meeting.
Go ahead.
On October 6th, would you like to add a daytime committee of the whole for this? Or keep it in the evening?
I'm happy with the daytime committee of the whole, but our work are the ones that
I'll
will
make it work.
decide.
That's Monday. That's a Monday, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay, I think you want a resolution?
Sure.
Well, yeah, and then maybe before that, I guess. So now I think we're deciding how to deal with everything, but if you do want to have, say, a few more things tonight,
Yeah.
Yes.
then we're here for that too. Okay, good.
Just to try. Okay, so you would say that council directs staff to or that council defer this report to the October 6th, the zoning report to the October 6th meeting, and direct staff to bring this report back to that meeting, and yes, have, or book, what would you say?
You could just say to,
For a daytime committee of the whole
Schedule.
meeting on October 6th.
But maybe they're not deferring it because they are actually
Yeah.
considering it
Yeah.
tonight a little bit.
Yeah.
They're continuing it.
yeah, I think
So
so.
what's
Yeah.
what's
So
the
we're
term for
just
that?
making the motion to bring it back.
Bring back the exact report.
Yeah.
For further discussion, okay.
Sorry, thought I could do
Yeah.
that.
Makes sense.
Complete with engagement.
But wait,
No confidence in it.
the original intent of Councillor Siriel's request, which I think everyone fully supports me to, is that we consider the OCP and zoning after we've received public feedback. So on October the 6th, we will not have had any public feedback about zoning.
Great.
So that is not the purpose, to my mind, of October the 6th.
Oh.
It would be that when the engagement report is available for one of those, whichever one of those we're considering, bylaws, that we then have a suitable opportunity, be it committee of the whole or regular,
Nice.
to take the feedback from the engagement report and have a substantive discussion in preparation for that.
So October 20th may be a better date for that.
That is a daytime budget meeting,
Oh, that's,
all-day budget.
that's all day budget.
We could do the 27th.
Do we need to decide exact dates now, or is the intent clear and staff can come back to us?
There's only so many Mondays, and we can only do it on Mondays. That's the problem.
And I'm just wondering, does council still want the opportunity to provide your feedback to this report even, like, on October 6th? Even if you do want extra time after the public engagement? Like, that's what I was thinking about that, because you haven't had a chance tonight to do it.
I think, yeah, so we could bring the OCP, because we'll have final comments on the OCP, right?
My recommendation would be, I just found my draft dates, and these are just draft, depending on how the work goes. We'd be aiming for November 10th, Committee of the Whole, for the summary of engagement for both the OCP and the zoning bylaw together, and including that recommendation and an amended bylaw, and including that recommendation for first reading, to keep on track for the provincial deadline. But of course, then council has the option to say we actually refer this back to staff for further changes before we get readings.
So,
Okay, so we could add a cow to the November 10th meeting to give us more time to consider those two FD documents. That works, because then we've got lots of time to organize the response and stuff, and we can get as far as we get today with the zoning bylaw. Okay, that is the Monday after Wednesday, so let's not do this.
Always fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think also,
okay.
yeah.
Good. And yeah, we're good from there. Thank you.
So maybe we should,
Should you make the
can we,
motion?
yes.
Just so we know exactly what you're.
Yes, make the motion.
I'll move that staff bring forward the OCP and bylaw engagement to a committee of the whole on November 10th. Okay?
Yeah.
For further discussion.
So no bringing this report back on October 6th. As well.
That's
It's
necessary.
pre-engagement.
You don't need to do it.
No, that's
Okay.
pre-engagement, yeah.
Okay.
We might need time to give more feedback.
Yes, I think October 6th was so you have more time to give more feedback. That's
yes.
the only motion we need. We don't need that motion for November because we were planning on bringing it back to you anyway.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
scratch that, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll move that staff bring forward this report for further discussion at a committee of the whole on October 6th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
And all in favor?
Yay, we got there.
Excellent. That's unanimous. Okay, so can I just suggest that we focus our first thoughts, like do a round on the first, the parking things first, give that, make sure, so that we're making sure we give that feedback to staff, and then industrial, and then go to the whole bylaw questions, yeah?
Sure. And I'll start there. I am in favor of the reduced parking limits, and also in favor of no cash in lieu for residential and accommodation purposes in the downtown core.
Excellent. You're next.
I concur with the same thing.
Excellent.
Same.
Excellent. So on that, I am also, but on, in the document, on page 166, it says cash in lieu may be provided
For non-residential uses.
for and a maximum of 30% of the required parking spaces associated with residential uses. That seems contrary to that. Is that coming out?
Yes,
Thank you.
Page
that's
160,
exactly correct.
it's coming out.
The bylaw is drafted to include cash in lieu for residential, because that is what the existing bylaw has. With your direction, those provisions would come out.
Okay, great.
So that would be footnote 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Scratch those questions.
Okay, and so removing cash in lieu and removing street parking, that's all good. And now industrial lands, free zone.
I'm actually not in favor of this at this point. I'm in favor of this in general. I'm actually not in favor of this at this point. I'm in favor of this in general, but I don't think we're ready. The report that, the March 24th Bevan report that we received showed quite clearly that the village could be facing a major deficit, in infrastructure deficit, if we go forward with this project at this point in time. So pre-zoning all of these lands, and then once we zone the lands as industrial, the genie's out of the bottle, people can just start using them for industrial purposes. And we're gonna have very little recourse to slow them down. And we're not ready to service that area at this point in time. So I think we're getting just slightly ahead of ourselves until we've got a better idea of how we're going to manage our infrastructure out there. I'm in favor, it's in the OCP as industrial lands, so that's not gonna require an OCP amendment for us to, once we've got our ducks in a row, to then rezone this at that time.
Council, who's next?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Kieran. It just feels like our capacity is pretty maxed out right now, and that seems like, kind of the genie out of the bottle kind of thing, a little bit with our capacity. We're looking at a whole bunch of changes in the village. I don't know, it just seems like a lot to just add on to. I don't know if I'm ready for that either.
Yes, I agree with that too. Without a way of significantly upfront funding some of the infrastructure needs there, then we are setting ourselves up for a deficit situation, a loss, making a loss by zoning those, which is the idea of having industrial is to not just provide employment, but also provide support for residential tax base and limit the tax burden on our residential homes. Without a way of having a significant influx of capital upfront to support that infrastructure, and I think we should hold it.
I agree with that too. I think there's no hurry. It's already in our OCP. If it allows us to get some concessions in the future as well for somebody who's really keen on developing something out there. I think we could maybe even sweeten the pot for ourselves as well. So I don't see, without these lots being currently serviced, the need to rush into it. Given it's
Thanks, Council. So I think there's a few things for me. I hear you and the concern around pre-zoning and allowing us to move forward without fully understanding what the life cycle costs of doing that will be. But we do have several tools on hand to deal with those life cycle costs. We have AACs, or whatever the new thing is, AAPs, is that what they are? ACCs, thank you, and DCCs, and we also have an industrial tax rate that is separate from a residential tax rate, and if we need to, we will hike that up to cover the costs of maintaining infrastructure. That's what those property taxes are for. So I think maybe the trade-off, or the way I'm seeing it, is we pre-zone it to add ease for developing those lands, which this community has counted on for a good number of decades to save us from being completely dependent on a residential tax base. And then we deal with the problem of how much it costs to maintain it by dealing with that when we understand the full costs and implementing a property tax mechanism that actually has it paying for itself or its future maintenance. And then also doing the advocacy work that we plan to do at UBCM and in other ways in the future. And maybe I just want to give Courtney a chance to say whether or not that it's possible for us to do that with the mechanisms that I have spoken to. It is a considerable amount of money that we would need to be putting into reserves to maintain that infrastructure. Is it reasonable to do that with property taxes? And are we going to kill the development with really high property taxes? And it's not going to happen either way. So we kill it this way or we kill it with property taxes. Yes, that's my concern.
I mean, the fiscal impact analysis did say there was going to be a deficit. I believe, though, that we are, that's what we've put the grant application in for the Integrated Financial Sustainability Plan. And that was one of the big reasons for that was to inventory all our revenue sources and then figure out how to use that to pay for all infrastructure within the village, including replacement of this infrastructure once it's installed and paid for by the developer, like at the beginning. And then I think that the fiscal impact analysis talks about rezoning it industrial lands, I believe, was so that you could be in control of making sure that it was development heavy rather than vacant land or something left as. That's why I think it said to do that, is so that you had more control over it. But I think I'd have to ask you about that.
And then the other thing while you're answering is what's the consequence of having to update the zoning bylaw later?
Well, I think the plan, the fiscal impact analysis talked about the huge benefit of rezoning the land to spur development. So to wait for a rezoning application or choose to do it later, it is certainly a strategy, but with risk that development will go elsewhere or it will happen more slowly than is sort of financially helpful. We do have, we're working on what year in the 5-year financial plan to bring forward a BCC bylaw update. So that is definitely something we want to do as soon as we can. ACCs are not applicable to industrial, but there's the DCCs as well. And we've actually done quite a bit else in the zoning bylaw to try and incentivize the industrial development out there. One of the other recommendations was to kind of like encourage more intensive development, because that does up the tax rate. So we're trying to make changes to do that as well. There are so many variables and dials in that, in that fiscal impact assessment. It's really hard to know the impact of each change that's made.
So maybe what we can suggest is to have another, well, I don't, yeah, to not make this decision today, and come back. I'm happy to call a vote if that's what council wants, but I'm also happy to have this conversation after we get feedback from the public. I think either way, we need to do some thinking and maybe a review of that fiscal impact study, and then see what the minister has to say next week. But it's up to you.
I'm happy to defer this for a little bit, and gather some more information. Other questions then that come to mind as Mayor Brown was talking about taxation, can we, she suggested we raise the taxes on industrial, but then that is going to sort of almost punish our current industrial users, or is it possible to make that a special, can we carve out a special taxation zone, or is that a utility zone then that we can, a special utility zone, is that a possibility?
So I believe the analysis talked about a local service area tax or something like that. So that would be all part of that fiscal, or that financial integrated sustainability plan. Now, if we don't get the grant, we have a direction from council to look at our frontage taxes and our wastewater treatment plant parcel taxes, like see diversifying that type of, and we would definitely plan, like, we don't obviously want a deficit either from the fiscal impact, so we would definitely do that work as well, figure out how to tax if we do get development out there as well, in a different way that we don't impact other ratepayers.
So maybe we can, when this all comes back on the 6th, you can bring back a little bit more information on what a local service area would look like, and what some other tools and levers that we could use to make sure that we don't end up in a deficit position by forwarding this. Like I said, in general, I'm in favor of this. I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up.
Agreed, thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so
No, shut up. Let's-
general feedback on the zoning bylaw. We are doing now. Yeah, we can do, we want to set a time because we do have another closed meeting. So should we go till 8? That's plenty of time.
15 minutes, we can do it all day.
See what we can do. Who wants to go first?
I was short.
Okay.
I don't like it. Hang on. This is just, sorry, I'm not thinking totally clearly today, but one of the pieces of feedback, not just from one individual, but several, is why the urban containment boundary kind of misses out on Wellington and Hope. What was, I remember us discussing this a while back, but what was, it does sort of stick out like a bit of a sore thumb on the map.
Can I just interrupt and say that's an OCP question, and the OCP is coming back to us on
Okay.
October 6th, and we have 15 minutes to go through the whole zoning bylaw. Can we wait until?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Any zoning bylaw things?
That was my main question, but I guess it was OCP. Sorry, my apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not technically on the
I'll
agenda.
I just.
I think you had to rephrase it in a zoning bylaw kind of way. To work on it. Can I ask one about mixed use? About multifamily. And this is that we've got RMU is being proposed as a consolidated multifamily zone. And as we've gone through these exercises looking at the affordable housing, looking at Ulverston, looking at those pieces, we've often said, well, you see, this zone is being created in a sort of custom way because it's a special, there's special things about this zone. So how are we handling it? Firstly, that Ulverston isn't zoned yet and is marked here as zoned. The zone map is Ulverston Lot A, so I firstly mentioned that, and I think that's premature. But then if we take that RMU zone and say, well, you know, it has a four-story permission on height, does that mean that the seniors unit at the intersection of Dunsmuir and Egremont, for example, could redevelop as 4 stories within this zoning? And how are we handling those? There have been large variations between those sites in this consolidation to a single zone.
So, I'll just answer for Union Square, it's on the smaller sewer lines, so no, they wouldn't be able to do that, I think, because it's specially zoned for no expansion, I think, right now.
The Southwest.
Even though it is zoned.
Even though it's shown with the blue zoning.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, and for example, the sort of multiplex development at the entrance to the forest in the Second Street has that similar piece, and I'd be against a good large development there, a higher development down there. But I'm just asking a question of how they're handling what have been significant variations between those sites.
Yeah. Carrie, can you take that one?
Yes, of course. So a couple of questions to unpack there. We'll speak first to the Ulverston lot that has been zoned under the RMU, and just want to clarify that it's not a mixed-use zone, it's just a multi-unit residential zone. So I know, it's my understanding that that site is sort of being proposed for mixed uses, and that's what's shown in the OCP. Whereas the zoning is not accounting for mixed uses. So the thought here is that the zoning aligns with that direction in the OCP for higher density of residential uses, but it doesn't account for the mixed uses, the commercial, et cetera. And so they would still have to come for rezoning. As for the other questions about, these multi-unit developments have been done on a case-by-case basis to account for site-specific conditions. That is absolutely true. What we did notice is that almost all the regulations that were written for those individual zones actually looked very, very similar. And so rather than having it written 5 ways in slightly different fonts, we now just have it shown here as one, with the addition of the rental tenure multi-unit zone as well. Now, your question about redevelopment to a slightly different standard, say from 2 to 4 stories, that is, of course, a possibility. However, all of these sites having been developed in more recent years, they have low likelihood of redevelopment scores, and so that is why we felt confident sort of providing this upzone, if you will, acknowledging that there is actually still a very low likelihood of redevelopment given the recency of those developments. And also the viability of 2 and 3 story development at present is lower anyway. So there's sort of a multitude of factors that went into that decision, if that makes any sense. Did that answer that question?
To some degree, I mean, my point about Ulverston is that they're in the process of a rezoning, and therefore, I just leave that there, that maybe it changes once that's complete or stays as is. But also that the Union Square, albeit there may be some difference there, but also, but definitely the bottom of Second Street, those ones down there might be considered as coming towards the end of life, those buildings. They must be 30 or 40 years old. And there's a couple of other sites here that I see this could be about 4 story redevelopment opportunity right away.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, for a couple of those lots there that are multifamily housing, BC housing lots, we did think it was important to kind of pre-zone for redevelopment, those affordable housing developments.
I had a zoning related question that I was asking
Excellent.
before, sorry about that. So this came up to me from a number of residents, both in both areas of the R3 zones there. What's the rationale behind having only 2 permitted dwellings on it? Is it because you would expect maybe a subdivision application then in the future to make those lot sizes smaller, or to rezone to R1? Because it says just on the table 10.4, there's maximum of 10 dwellings, or 2 dwellings per lot on the largest of the lots.
Can you take that one, Kara?
On the residential 3.
RM3.
On the R3, the R3 zone within the urban containment boundary, those parcels are either insufficiently serviced to accommodate higher level density than what's there. So those are the ones on the south of Royston, and then the ones on Union as well. And then the parcels outside of the urban containment boundary weren't applicable for the SMA applicability, the infill zone, because they're outside of the urban containment boundary. So it sort of goes back to your original question about the UCB, which is, like I said earlier, the decision that was made as part of the OCP process earlier on.
So those lots at the bottom of Roy, on the, I guess it's the south side of Royston Road, those are insufficiently serviced.
We've got sewer.
I believe they had sewer and water down. I believe they are serviced, but they're larger than 4,050 square meters, which is also one of the criteria for SMA. So they're too large on the south side of Royston and insufficiently serviced on Union Road.
So they
And
essentially,
some of the Union Road properties are also too large for SMA applicability.
so they essentially remain unchanged from the current zoning bylaw. So we're adopting the SMA where required, and where the lots are larger than the SMA would be required, or leaving them basically as is, which is the 2 units in the zoning bylaw.
To that then, they're allowed 35% lot coverage and in RM3. So are we really allowing a 1 acre lot with 2 dwellings to build up 30,000 square feet of housing? On over 2 stories, 15,000 square feet on the bottom and another 15 on the top. You can build 2 15,000 square foot homes on a 1 acre lot on Cumberland Road. Is that, am I reading this correctly?
You are reading that correctly, and that is the existing standard. They can already do that in that zone.
Lot coverage is not just dwellings, it includes other things, and yeah, it's the status quo.
I think the concern is around, we wanted large lots to allow for agriculture in the community core, and to allow for tree canopy cover, and to allow for rural sort of living, not to allow for monster homes. Is there a way to limit the lot coverage on only those large lots?
Yeah, lot coverage can be further limited, and square footage of houses can be limited too, which isn't something that it is something we've done with ADUs, but not principal dwellings. Some other jurisdictions have attempted to do that as well. And look, Kara, it would be pretty unusual, I think, to have a significantly lower lot coverage, even though the possible use of fully realizing the lot coverage is there. Do you have any other comments?
I don't have any other further comments. I do. I have one further comment. When we talked about adding impermeable surface maximums earlier in our presentation, so we did that across all zones, whether they remained unchanged or they were changed. And so in this particular instance, the large lot zones, that zoning hasn't changed. The lot coverage is the same. The setbacks are the same, height maximums, etc. But we did impose an impermeable surface maximum. And I'm just looking, I mean, that impermeable surface maximum is 70%, which is double that lot coverage. But the thought there is that that would include, like I said, any sort of type of pervious surface for the purpose, hopefully, of reducing sort of larger types of development that otherwise would have been not captured by lot coverage, things like large carports, large patios, decks, massive swaths of like gravel parking areas, those kinds of things. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to pull back on once it's already been given for so long. If you were to reduce the lot coverage maximum at this time, you might end up with a bunch of non-conforming properties and a bunch of angry homeowners. So you kind of have to balance that as well with those other goals about keeping the land usable as land for good uses.
Thank you. I have a question. Oh, you have a question?
I don't have any questions. I like the improvements, especially with the homeowner provisions. But home occupation provisions, I like that we can stretch that out.
Now I've lost my question. That's okay. They'll come back to me.
And while you're getting that, I do have one question. I was looking at the zoning map for the interchange lands. I know that it's exactly the same as the existing zoning map has been for the last 10 years. So there's no changes at all to zoning the interchange land. At the OCP level, we've made it a blanket future land use to encourage a master planning process. And I recall some discussion in a presentation and in Open ABC about the possibility of changing that zoning, basically back to what it had been before the Kaya proposal, given that nothing's happened here. So can I just ask whether staff have any sort of comment or input in why this zoning hasn't changed at all, and whether there's been any consideration to basically understand that, change them?
Yeah, I can take that one. So we did look at this as we introduced the concept in the March presentation to council on the zoning bylaw. And what we did do is really make changes in the OCP. So now in the OCP, there's a single land use designation for the interchange lands called interchange lands, and a new description of what this designation means that sort of sends a message of what the community's vision is, as we understand it from engagement. And just to paraphrase, it's basically the land isn't needed for a 20-year protected housing needs. It's mostly outside of the new proposed urban containment boundary, and that the area requires further planning and design to clarify future use. So that's the approach, after lots of thought and consideration taken, is just to change the OCP, leave the zoning bylaw the same, and anticipate a more detailed planning process coming from the owners on those lands.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I remembered my question. So the definition of manufactured homes, I believe, is probably the same as what it was before. Did we look at trying to expand that definition to allow for tiny homes?
So I can take that one as well. Tiny homes are something that are really hard to regulate for a multitude of reasons. when we think of tiny home, there's like a range of things that come to mind, but most often what a tiny home actually is some sort of portable type of trailer. And when it's portable, there's only like one type of CSA standard that is applicable, and it's the RV standard. And using an RV type of recreational vehicle, tiny home with the RV standard as a long-term housing solution isn't something that a lot of communities are trying to do because they aren't built to last, and they also are really challenging to hook up to permanent servicing. Now, there are tiny homes that are built as permanent structures, but they are really small. And so when they're built in that way, they are impossible to achieve building code. And so you can't actually get residential occupancy. And the reason for that is because they typically have one door and one or two windows. They don't meet any fire code. They struggle to get proper insulation, etc. So they don't meet building code, and they also rarely can achieve the mobile home CSA standard, which is a slightly better version of that RV standard. So we typically sort of recommend to avoid permitting them explicitly within the zoning bylaw. If you can build a home that is small to the building code, that is a lot smaller than what you would consider a standard dwelling unit, that is permitted here within the zoning bylaw as written. But we don't include the language around tiny homes because what that actually means, to see it in the document as a permitted use, but meaning one thing as a building that's up to code and has occupancy, is very different from somebody bringing a trailer and putting it on their friend's driveway and then living in it for an extended period of time. And so it becomes a health and safety liability, all of those things, to have it kind of there, unless there's like a big push for public education around the topic as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So we are at 8. Do you have something quick?
Yeah, just something very quick. I noticed under the, was it I3, the gas capture is not one of the permitted uses. Maybe we should look at that in light of what the CVRD is trying to do there.
Thanks, we'll have a look at that.
Okay, are we ready to, we're not ready to move on, but it's gonna come back to us?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna look at it again. So we will move on. You got what you needed for the parking, yes?
Could I ask for resolution on the parking?
Oh, yes. Somebody move that parking.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll recommend the council direct staff to revise the draft zoning bylaw to remove off-street parking and loading requirements for non-residential and non-hotel, hostel and motel uses in the village core. And the council direct staff to revise the draft zoning bylaw to remove cash and loop of parking provisions for residential and hotel, hostel and motel uses.
All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to purchasing management services policy, spending authority update.
Okay, I'll be quick
You're
here.
not Android either, but here you are.
No, Andrew, me again. Okay, so the purchase, this is just yet another small amendment. We're limping along. We do have a comprehensive purchasing policy analysis that will come your way later, hopefully in 2026. It has a lot of things that it needs to be added, Indigenous procurement, you know, a review of the social procurement, like a bunch of really meaty things, and we haven't been able to get to it. So this is another just small amendment to get us to be able to operate. The first part of it is to add the manager of manager of licensing, permit, and bylaw to be able to purchase and have authority to purchase. And the second is to add some group purchasing options, and that is so that we can leverage some larger organizations that have gone out for competitive bids and negotiated deals under a bigger buying purchasing power, and such as like Canoe or the provincial supply arrangement and things. And so we just need language in our purchasing policy to allow us to use those groups, and then we can take advantage. That'll save us on our own competitive bidding, like they've already done it, so then we don't have to. And we can still make sure that we analyze our needs for social procurement and environmental in the purchasing policy to try to.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I just have a question at the bottom of the report. It says proposals received through competitive bidding at the village sometimes do not include social procurement. If they're strong in other evaluation criteria points, they may still be awarded the contract. Would that be just for the group bidding, or are we currently?
That's correct.
Sorry, which one are you looking at?
Just at the bottom of the page, it says it's important to note that Colonel, okay, right, I just answered that. Okay, I do have a question. Why we're currently not using the social procurement policy?
Okay.
That's a strange sentence to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I'm sure I wrote that sentence probably. I probably helped, but I'm just trying to find it. But, so if if it says we currently.
Sorry, at the bottom of page 241.
241, and it says additional staff will need to research, bidding,
It
evaluate.
says that in some proposals, if strong in other evaluation criteria points, may be awarded the contract without social procurement.
Yes, so what it means is that we often, like our framework says, we use evaluation points of 5 to 15 points for social procurement. And so, you know, if we really, really need to put high points on quality and our budget is really quite tight, we might have to put high points on price as well. Then we might have to use 5 points on social procurement. And so if they're higher on those other ones, they might not actually put any social procurement into their proposal, and they will just lose 5 points. So that sometimes happens. And then the framework for social procurement also says, like where possible. So there's the odd thing that we haven't been able to do. Yeah.
Okay. There's a recommendation there. There's no other questions.
I'll move that council amend the Appendix A Schedule of Signing Authority of the Purchasing Management Services Policy number 3.3 as presented, and that council amend the Purchasing Management Services Policy 3.3 to include provisions for participation in group purchasing programs and corporate supply arrangements as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? And no one's opposed, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you, and we are on to bylaws, 2026 permissive tax exemptions. That's you as well, Michelle?
That's me, and that's actually me. Okay, so this comes around every year. This time it's slightly different. Council added permissive tax exemptions for lands held for conservation purposes to their financial plan policy. That was done back in July. So now there's 2 lands that have been added to your permissive tax exemption for lands held for conservation. Staff have received the required documentation and are satisfied with recommending that council give first, second, and third reading to a 1-year bylaw at this point. There was a request by one of the applicants for a 10-year permissive exemptions. At this time, I think staff is just recommending approval for 1 year. And just quickly, it will be advertised per the charter. And the taxes foregone for 2026 are estimated to be just over $32,000 for the group that's in the bylaw. Thank you.
I'll move the council consider first, second, and third reading of the municipal tax exemption 2026 bylaw number 1237, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And that takes us to notices, motions, and announcements. Please check the website before you come to any of these meetings to make sure they're actually happening. Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee is happening September 17th at 9:30 a.m. here in Moncrief Hall, as is Heritage Committee September 18th at 4 p.m. and Accessibility and Inclusion Committee September 29th at 3 p.m. Questions?
Yes.
Quickly, is the half actually happening here? My invite had said something about the file. The old file, sorry, Public Works.
I think we'll confirm that. We're having some issues with meeting spaces availability, so,
It's fine. Just if anyone's thinking of coming to
It's
the Homeless
probably-
Affordable Housing Committee, please double check before you do.
yes, please. Okay, question period. They have a question on the Penrith Avenue project. For Penrith, which way would the one-way go?
I believe it's coming up from 4th to 1st.
That's my understanding, is it would come up to First,
Yeah,
That makes sense.
West.
Yeah.
west.
yeah.
Counter.
Okay, there's here. Good question. There's a few here, okay. There are some detailed questions about the zoning bylaw, and the Director of Development Services let me know that it might be best for those to refer to staff to respond to, because they're detailed in the zoning. That's not a question. That's not a question. So there's two of those questions about the zoning bylaw. And that will be referred to staff. That's okay.
Yeah,
And that's it.
okay, great. And there is a closed portion that has a bit of new things to add.
I'll move the council to close the meeting to public pursuant to section 90 of the committee charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, between communications necessary for that purpose, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98 of this report, and the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that exposure to be reasonably expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We are now closed.